know me? Nah, I'm just a worm.
I'm currently trying to make a fantasy film, and right now, I'm in the screenwriting process, or the pre-production. And in this video, I'll be showing you what my process is. What dark fantasy movies, specifically from the 80s, that's what I like the most, am I gonna draw from and put in my own film? The films we're gonna analyze are going to be The Labyrinth, Neverending Story, Dark Crystal, and a little bit more obscure one, but it's still important, Legend. Now, initially when I think of dark fantasy, I'm not thinking of writing. I'm thinking more so of art design. I'm thinking of the dragons, the castles, the demon creatures, the bad guys, you know? And then I'm also thinking of all the armor, everything that's shiny, everything that looks interesting. That's a lot of the reason why these films hold up today is not necessarily for the writing style, but more so because of that art design and that bling that comes with everything. But ingrained in that bling and all of that interesting showmanship that's in those films, the writing has to correlate with that and make sense. It has to make the story move forward and make all that stuff be reasonable within the context of the film. Now, first off, we have to analyze who these films are made for. At least back then. They're made for kids in the 80s. Now, that's a little different from today, obviously, because I think a lot of people who enjoy these films are not necessarily children, like under the age of 12, but more so teenagers. And young adults enjoy these films the most. Specifically with The Labyrinth, I've seen is very, very common among the alternative scene. I equate that mainly to David Bowie, but other films like The Neverending Story, in my opinion, have a stronger foundation. They have scenes that are written so powerfully, mainly because of the emotion of the characters. And I believe that that is why this film, out of these four films, is the strongest. It has the best writing, and it incorporates those kind of unique artistic styles into it as well. I mean, the emotional beats in that movie are just intense. The scene with Arthrax, the horse just dying in the mud out of sadness, is just insane for a kid's movie, and it really stuck with the kids from that generation, and when I saw it at least, that stuck with me. Scene with Gmork, the wolf, it's just so evil and just pure hatred. The writing in it's beautiful as well. Additionally, there's the scene with the fall of Fantasia. Bastian trying as hard as he can to save this realm and really not knowing how to. Kind of just goes back into the stylistic choices and writing choices that were made for kids. A lot of the times they don't have the answer to things. Bastian in that movie, he hides from all of his problems. Falkor being a semblance of a character that can kind of help him and push him forward against the real life bullies. But that kind of writing ingrained with real life within this world of Fantasia is just brilliant. It mixes everything perfectly, and that's why everything feels like it has stakes, because the world feels real. And that gets us into Gmork, the wolf that serves the nothing. More so, I'm going to look at the character, the archetype of Gmork, and how he's used within the rest of these kind of 80s fantasy films. There's a clear kind of pattern within some 80s films as far as like the bad guy just twisting his mustache and comically evil. This character specifically, it represents this kind of depression.
And whoever has the control has the power.
The Skeksis from the Dark Crystal are very, very similar to that. They have this kind of the sadness about them. When the king dies, it's super creepy and it's super strange. Makes you feel like a little bit bad for the character, even though they're so evil and so terrible, you know?
I am still Emperor.
I'd say that David Bowie's character in The Labyrinth strays away from this the most. He's very likable, but again, I say that that's mostly David Bowie doing that, and if that was a different person in that role, he wouldn't be likable to the same extent. Of course, he has a few songs to kind of like lighten it up a little bit, but at the end of the day, he's captured our main character's brother, a baby, you know, which is a horrible thing, and I think that that character, you know, having that kind of charm kind of alleviates from some of the hatred we should have towards him that we do have for these other characters. David Bowie's character is a wonderful example of how to mix the kind of evil mustache twisting villain with kind of likability. You know, he's not an anti-hero necessarily, but it's more so a combination of style and coolness and what would be an interesting looking villain, kind of like a comic book villain, mixing it in with those evil kind of characteristics that are present throughout these other stories. And that gets us into Legend as well. Legend has kind of a David Bowie character with the Darkness, I believe is his name. It's kind of like a devil-like character played by Tim Curry, who is again super likable. And because of the likability of the character and the design of the character as well, I mean, he looks amazing. The costume is amazing in that. I mean, it's a very forgotten 80s fantasy movie, but Tom Cruise is in it. Wonderful film. The unicorn scenes are absolutely beautiful. But in that scene specifically, or any scene with the Darkness, he kind of takes over. He takes over completely the voice, and Tim Curry, again, being super likable. It's a good mix of having the characteristics from the dark, evil mustache-twisting villain, but also having the David Bowie coolness that kind of balances it out and makes a good character.
To me, you're nothing but an animal.
We are all animals, my lady. Most are too afraid to see it.
That's an aspect I'm going to be taking at least into my own film. Having kind of a humanoid appearance kind of alleviates and makes everything feel more realistic, and it makes the cool factor also feel a little bit more ingrained. Now, again, the never-ending story, the Darkness, is such an awesome concept, but it's hard for someone to visualize, even a kid to visualize, That's again why I think they put the character of the wolf Gamork into the story, just because having the Darkness by itself would be such like an abstract feature that I don't think kids would be able to fully understand it. By having something physical and tangible as a villain like Gamork makes a very feasible obstacle to overcome. Now, what about our hero archetypes? So specifically, I want to look at who the audience is again. It's kids, So in the Labrynth and the Neverending Story, we have a child protagonist. Dipping into Princess Bride a little bit, we can kind of see the almost exact same story with the Neverending Story as far as the kid reading and uncovering all this information in a book. In that story, it's a little bit more of medieval fantasy, not exactly the dark fantasy that we're looking for, but it has good aspects and it's very memorable to pull from and kind of implement in what we want to look at in my own story. And we see through Tom Cruise's character in Legend and Jen from The Dark Crystal that they're in their mid-20s, So we're still trying to resonate with this younger audience. We're trying to place our shoes within their shoes, and the writers are trying to write around them. Typically, the villain is older, more experienced, and smarter, and the hero has to beat the villain through perseverance and a little bit of wit that kind of goes over the head of the supposed to be smarter, older villain. Now that we have an understanding for our protagonists and our antagonists, what about our secondary characters, our sidekicks? Who's going to assist the main character on their journey? So to illustrate a little bit of these archetypes, let's go through. Let's see the difference between these three characters. Well, one of them is big, dumb, and throws rocks. One of them is big, dumb, and controls rocks. And one of them is big, dumb, and made out of rocks. So what's the difference? Well, there's none. They're basically all the same character. They're, cookie cutter character, and that's all right. That's okay for that to be like that. It's not uncommon at all to see our main character go through their journey with, a muscle, a smart outlier. I start to think of the little goblin guy from the Labyrinth who kind of leads our main character around. There's a lot of characters like that that kind of introduce themselves into these films and stick with it, but are also basically cookie cutters off of the same versions that have been going. And typically when I look at a 3-act structure for these films, I see a very, strong semblance among them of a upward slope where we have little bad guy, little bad guy, little bad guy, and then big bad guy who caused all of these small problems to begin with. Kind of think of the flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz, They're just small little dents in the road that all connect back to our big bad guy that a hero wants to get to. In almost all these movies, they win. Kind of think of that scene in Star Wars, Death Star's blown up, and now we're all gonna celebrate. Does it really matter then, the stage of the bad guys, and is it really all just visual storytelling as far as the kind of small offsets that happen up to the big bad guy? The Labyrinth is pretty stereotypical with how they do this. The holes in the middle of the ground, they have it to where there are just random gates, and she has to defeat just small animals and goblins and things like that to get to Jareth or David Bowie. That's pretty stereotypical, and I would try to lean away from that, specifically in my own film, because it just doesn't really serve the plot very well, and it's just very visually appealing. but I didn't really care about any other scene than scenes with David Bowie because he was just so prominent. Now that we've analyzed these 4 films, we're going to see how to put that into my film. Specifically, we're going to look at the best aspects of the films we just went over and how to combine those aspects into just a powerhouse short film. I don't have the resources to make a full feature, obviously, so we're going to look at what makes the best short film, how to condense everything together, but also make it make sense in the story. Now, me and my co-director are going off of really like a 7-Eleven gas station worker salary. It's not very much. And for this short film, we want to have really cool visuals, but we don't really have the locations to back it up. We don't have castles or giant forests in England, or we really don't have labyrinths either, you know? So we have to look at what we do have. You have to write what you have. And because of that, I wrote into my first manuscript of the film several kind of field type locations, and where I did have a little bit of forest, but I've imagined it to where I could shoot a certain way to make the forest look bigger. If we did put VFX in the film, it would most likely look like that god-awful owl scene from the Labrynth, and a lot of those films just really had bad VFX. The type of practical effects that were used back then are what we want in our films, so we want to use practical effects, we're going to use practical effects. The nostalgia is there and it just looks better in my opinion for a lot of scenes. The budget that we have would maybe cover like half of one Jim Henson puppet, you know? It's just unrealistic for any really filmmaker that's on such a low level like that. But at the same time, I want puppets in my film. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna make them from scratch. How are you gonna make your film special? Especially if you're on a short film kind of route, you know, you can look at something really small or you can go with the same kind of structure. And I wanna go with the same kind of structure, just kind of cutting to the climax almost. I'll have my character defeat a bad guy, uncover an obstacle and get to the biggest bad guy, defeat him, save the whoever, right? That's a pretty good, you know, strategy for at least a simple plan. If we take that those bones in that story right there, and we apply it to those 4 films, pretty much the exact same thing, right? So at this point, you have to look at what makes your story unique. Is your baby brother trapped by David Bowie? Are the unicorns being killed off and they might all, you know, disappear? Is there a crystal or something? What makes your story unique and what makes it stand out among the other stories? The reason I mentioned legend earlier among these films is because it's like the cookie cutter, what I imagine as like a fantasy film. And so where does that leave us now? Well, I'm on the first iteration of my script, and me and my co-director have gone through, we've marked it up, we've scratched out certain things. A lot of it now is finding a reason for our main character, kind of like an emotional reason why they are going on this journey. And we're kind of implementing everything that we've talked about within those 4 films to the best way we can, making it the most, you know, compelling story, having unique characters, the setting, and the kind of style of those older films in the writing, in the dialogue, while also being under the extreme constraints of money and time that we don't have that these other films do have. Films these days are too saturated with gray, paceless, lifeless, you know, slop that's being regenerated over and over and over again. So I think that having these types of films is important, and having these types of films that kind of go back and lean into those cheesy 80s, you know, culture is a good thing because it's fun. And those films were made for kids, and you don't see those types of films being made for kids anymore. A lot of the times the films that are made for kids are too bubbly, they don't have any real stakes, and they're too afraid to scare kids as well. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions in the comments, please put them there, and give me any advice. You know, if you've made a film like this before, or you're currently making a film and just want to leave something in the comments, please let me know. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.